Good morning, it's 9:09 and this is Arthur Murray USA. My name is Chris Lynam, and this is the time when I'm going to give you some type of tip, inspiration, food for thought, something to help you in your day, whether it's in your business or your journey through life, if it's for your dance hobby, online activity, if it is for anything really. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about setbacks, and particularly like when you hit rock bottom and you're encountered with something really challenging and you're not really quite sure what to do. Yesterday I talked about how powerful your narrative is and how important it is that sometimes a narrative can be so powerful, so strong, and so compelling that you can use it to rationalize even bad behavior, like something that's actually taking you further away from something that you really should be doing. And that's how powerful your narrative is. Like we compared it to I compared it to the diamond sword in Minecraft, for those of you geeks out there. So now, understanding that, let's talk about setbacks. So when I was, if you didn't know, my mom started a music school right out of our home, and she was teaching piano lessons when I was just a toddler, and I remember sitting underneath the piano while she was teaching lessons. Before, I guess I didn't have a babysitter back then, and then she grew it and grew it and grew it, and it became really successful. And to this day, she's got the largest private music school in California. And so, she's been doing this for over 30 years. So I always knew, like growing up, that at some point I would be a part of the family business. And actually my very first job was I was a clerk, and I folded flyers, and I handled tuition, and I did all these stuff that you'd expect someone at the front desk to do, but it was in our home office, and I was like 12 or 13, and then I also got a chance to teach for her. So what's interesting about that is I was dead set against working for my mom, and I didn't even want to become a teacher, which is really funny. But lo and behold, when I get into college, and I'm in and out of junior college, and I'm dropping classes more than I'm finishing them, and I'm not really sure, I'm feeling really lost. And so finally I decide, my mom says, if you want to come and be my office manager, we could really use your help. And so I decide, this is it. I'm going to work for my mom. I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to help run the family business. Now, what my mom didn't know was that I actually wanted to take over the family business, because I figured, gosh, if I'm sacrificing all these great opportunities that I have with the 12 different majors that I have, I better go all in. And so I worked for my mom, and on the very first day, I start telling her all the things that I want to change, this business that she's built from scratch. And I start examining everything, and I feel like I'm obligated to kind of tell her all of the internal things that need to be adjusted with the business. I'm telling her all about the big ideas that I have to really revolutionize her process, and good or bad, it was that was where I was coming from, and so it was maybe a week or two in, and my mom called me into the office, and she said, I love you, but I don't think that I can be your boss. And so I don't think that this is the place for you. So essentially, I got fired by my mom in the family business, and that's when I really felt super lost. So the moral of this story is that sometimes, like we talked about yesterday, your narrative, sometimes it needs to encounter setbacks, sometimes it needs new information, and sometimes you need to pivot from what's been holding you back. And so at that point, what I realized was I wasn't really cut out. First of all, you probably shouldn't tell the owner of a business on your first day what they need to do to fix their business if they're writing the checks. But what I realized at that point was I hadn't really gone all in on anything, and that was the first thing where I really attempted to go in 100%. And so I kind of shuffled around from job to job, and then it wasn't until I got to Arthur Murray that I decided to do the same thing. So my challenge to you is that sometimes we can encounter a setback, and I think if you are further and further outside your comfort zone, you are more and more likely to treat that setback, thinking about your narrative, you're more likely than not to treat that setback as some type of like fate. Like you might say to yourself, oh, well, I did everything right, but something about this situation, it was fate that's kind of giving me the information, the writing's on the wall. I wasn't meant to be in this place, and you can rationalize at that point, just like I talked about yesterday with your narrative. And one thing that I will tell you that I did is that when I got fired from my mom, I told everybody that I didn't get fired, that I decided that I was going to do something else. And I think the first tip to getting out of, when you're face down in the mud and you've totally hit rock bottom, is like the very first thing that you've got to do is you've got to be really honest with yourself and really actually share with somebody, this is what happened, this is what I could have done better, and this is where I lost this opportunity. And that's one thing that I kind of postponed in that process. And I think had I not postponed it, if I had actually been honest about why I got let go, then I probably would have understood like some of the things that I did that got me to that point. And like, who gets fired by their mom? So it's fun to talk about it now, but at the time I was confused and I was really frustrated. So one thing that I would recommend in solid book recommendation here is the question behind the question, and when you can ask that question to yourself, what could I have done differently to get what could I have done differently to have done a better job with this opportunity, and then suddenly now that rock bottom moment can actually be a pivot where you can really start to recover. So we had a good, okay, so Bobby, hey, greetings from Roseville. Hey, you're back home. That's awesome. And then Jay Ford, I got fired. So the question was, what did you get fired from? So I got fired from my mom's family business. So I was working for my mom, and she let me go. And so it was it's one thing to be fired by someone who you really don't care that much about, like some boss that maybe you never meet, but it's another thing to get fired by the person who brought you into this world. And so it was a bold move on my mom's part, and there's a whole other series of 909 meetings for business owners on the toughest fire that you have to make, and that was definitely one of them. So but for me, what I really learned was I wasn't taking accountability, and I was blaming everything on the outside for my situation. And so therefore what happened was I ended up transitioning from that job to another job where I just did the same thing. It wasn't my mom, but I blamed the job, I blamed the environment, I blamed my coworkers, and I didn't really learn the lesson that I could have learned the first time and truly recovered from that situation. So Janice 316. Yes. Word on the street is that my mom has written she's one of the unknown apostles. I don't know if that's sacrilegious. Anyway, so the number one thing to take away from this is that when you do have a setback, your instinct and the narrative that you've been hanging on to, when you tell yourself, that, and you want to rationalize, it's really easy now to make excuses or to blame what's on the external world around you. And really the way to pivot, to get up, off the mat, is that you have to, instead of blaming, you need to understand, like a boxer, you can't blame your opponent. You've got to blame yourself for not being in the right position and maybe not dodging the punch. And so, blaming that person's not going to help you get up off the mat. And that's the thing. I think what happens is that when we hit rock bottom, what we end up doing is we stay there a lot longer than maybe we even realize. Sure, we might get a new job. You could get let go from your job, but you might still be in the exact same place, still with a brand new job, with a new dental plan and a new 401k and a new office and in a new little cubicle. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have pivoted from that rock bottom feeling. And so, so that's really the moral. So anyway, thanks, Jay Ford. Good luck to you too. Life is like a roller coaster. I totally agree. Fortunately, it was a great learning lesson that helped me discover a lot about myself. It was on a time delay because I made a lot of excuses for a few years, but it's not unlike many up-and-coming 20-year-olds that that do that. So anyway, so you ask yourself the question. Pick up the book QBQ by John G. Miller, and it's a fantastic read. You can do it. You could read it, between on an hour and a half flight. If you're flying from Northern California to Seattle, you could finish the book cover to cover. But it's a fantastic read, and it's all about taking personal accountability, because I think without personal accountability, there's nothing that you can do to recover and to really rise up from that moment where you feel like you've lost everything. So that's the message for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure that you stay tuned to the story. So I'll post some little tidbits and stuff. And tomorrow is Q&A Friday. So go ahead and shoot over some questions. You can start thinking of some. And thank you, Arthur Murray Hamden. So that's tomorrow. Now there's a slight possibility it might be at a different time, because we are going to be road tripping it like the Griswold family from the Vacation movies. So we'll see. I might have to get creative tomorrow. So anyway, but it's never stopped this from happening before. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in.